Welcome to BCN's new series, What's Happening Now, a collection of informational and hopefully entertaining programs where we substantively speak to interesting and important people. And today, we have the good fortune to have Beaufort County Superintendent Matthew Cheeseman visiting us once again. And we're going to talk about a whole host of issues, but chief on our list is going back to school. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know it's an open question.
Yes, sir.
You can really run with that.
Oh, sure. We're very excited. Our Board of Education voted 8-1 last Friday morning to bring our pre-K through 5 students back to school under Plan A. So our students will be coming back Monday, October 12th, and we're just very excited about the opportunity as well as our parents are too. I'm certain of that. And then, of course, our middle school and high school students will return next Thursday on Plan B. And so they'll be in a design of 2 days a week face-to-face and 3 days a week remote. So overall, we're excited to see our students come back, and there'll be some dynamic challenges in the process, especially when you look at K through 8 schools having, your pre-K or K-5 students, and then also your 6-8 students. And they'll be run under 2 different plans as outlined by the state. But overall, we're just very excited that there might be a little bit more normalcy in a unnormal situation right now.
Is this the Plan A under Governor Cooper's unilateral decision to how he handles the schools?
Yes. So specifically, Beaufort County schools and all public schools were asked to submit a remote learning plan by July 20th. Back to the state, which we did. And at that time, we were really looking forward to potentially coming back as a Plan A. However, shortly thereafter, we learned that the options were only Plan B or Plan C. And as most people know, the board opted to go Plan B, which is essentially a hybrid model of some face-to-face and remote instruction, where Plan C was basically solely remote instruction.
So this is Plan B you're doing?
So we initially started as Plan B, and the reason we were under Plan B is the Board of Education voted to allow early college high school to start face-to-face with remote instruction on August 5th. So our early college high school students have actually been back in the building since August 5th, where some of those elected to stay remote. And so, for the most part, we could not call ourselves a Plan C because we actually had one school operating under a Plan B. And that's where the phrase hybrid comes from, which is just a very nice way of saying some of us were here and some of us weren't. And so now, the governor since came back and said, if you think you can do it, then you're welcome to go with Plan A if your board believes they can do it. And so our Board of Education did a lot of research through our employees, did a lot of working together and having conversations with our principals, our teachers, our families, and then ultimately made a decision, as I said last Friday morning, to come back under Plan A. So we believe we're ready, but like any great strategy and game plan, we know that we're going to have to call some audibles as we learn what challenges come once the kids come back. So that's where we are right now.
It is going to be very challenging. You're going to have different children with different needs, with different instructors, teachers with different needs.
Sure.
And you're going to try to meet all of them as best you can.
Yes. Yes. When you put it that way, sounds very easy to do. But
it's very complex, but all you have to do is follow the plan. But the plan's always changing.
Yes, it is. The plan has changed multiple times. We continue to get new guidance. We received new guidance again yesterday. But I think it's always in the best interest for our employees and our students. So there are some things that are strongly recommended, and there are other things that are absolutely required. But considering we're going to have to mesh both of those worlds, and really where we're looking at it, from an employee standpoint, as superintendent, I just want to make sure that we're well. We want to make sure that all of our employees are well. Mental health and hardships of our adults, have clearly been seen in certain circumstances across the community. So we want to make sure that our adults find time to make sure that their own families are well. And then from that, we want to make sure our students are well, coming into the building, making sure they get a breakfast, get a lunch, get a little bit more stability in their daily lives, a sense of normalcy of being around other students, because some of our students have not seen other students since March, believe it or not. And so we do understand this gives parents an opportunity to go back to work, instead of having to deal with their own childcare issues. So in totality, this is a really great starting place come Monday.
It's important for the children. It's important for their education. But moreover, it's important for society to get on footing that we've been experiencing for decades, centuries.
Oh, sure. Well, and remember, it's my personal belief, and maybe even professional belief, that there's no greater education than that between a student and a teacher, face-to-face, being able to work together. I know that we have many students who are extremely successful with online learning, but there's the value of having that rapport face-to-face inside of a room. There's values of having relationships with other kids, to be in a diverse environment. I think it's just really symbolic of society. So when you're able to do that and you're able to bring people back together, there's no greater feeling than that. But honestly, our teachers are the best in the state, best in the country. I just absolutely value what they do. Taught 14 years myself, so I know it's not easy, and I understand some of the challenges, but when I taught, we certainly didn't have a pandemic, so I won't pretend to know what they experience or even go through on a daily basis. But part of my role is to try to make it a bit easier for them, to provide them the resources that they need. But more than anything, at the end of the day, I want them to know just how thankful that I am and the Board of Education is for all of their service through this.
I'm going to ask you, how are you holding up? Because
great.
Superintendent Cheeseman is a very hands-on superintendent.
Yeah.
He goes around to all classrooms. He sees how things are working, and he experiences the classroom experience firsthand. You haven't been doing that lately. So that's why we're still keeping our 7 feet apart,
sure.
but you've got your mask there.
Absolutely.
I would be more concerned maybe of 4 weeks from now.
Well,
you're going to be on the front line. If anybody's on the front line, you're going to be on the front line.
Well, in my job role, there's differences of what the front line looks like. Mm-hmm. When I first arrived 21 months ago, being on the front line was a learning tour. Was to really understand about Beaufort County Schools, to really understand what we do, what it looks like, sounds like, maybe even feels like. And then as we started to grow into the next school year, it was more about really seeing what our efforts look like on a daily basis and to really see what students are doing and how we can help in that role. And now being on the front line is more about listening and being an effective listener. And being sincere in my words and the care that I have for people individually in our system. And so being on the front line is not showing up with some type of objective or command or directive or whatever you might call it. Now it's more about I'm present, I see you, I'm here for you, let's talk, and how about you talk more than I? And then I go back to our teammates and say, all right, this is what I've learned. And here are some actions that we need to do to benefit the employees of Beaufort County Schools and the children as a result.
Before the pandemic, before we closed down, I bet you'd never done any remote discussions, learning. It's something you've never experienced before. You had never interacted with teachers, except maybe on telephone or by email. But now you're probably doing a lot of face-to-face, aren't you?
Well, a few things. In my professional experience, I have had remote experience with hosting conferences, hosting meetings, professional speaking, working most effectively with our administrative teams, because when you're inside of a school building as an administrator, the last thing you want to do is leave your school building. So we really try to be thoughtful about meeting times, delivery of those meetings. But on a day-to-day basis prior to the pandemic, no. I really try to be the superintendent who is not at his desk, the superintendent who's inside of a building, the superintendent who's with business partners in our community. So I guess the best way to say that is I wanted to be the superintendent who's known as being available.
And thank you for being available for us, because we're reaching a whole lot of folks.
Absolutely.
And we will reach those folks for years to come, just off this one meeting.
Well, and the key part now is, so you go into a pandemic.
Yes.
And now most everyone is remote.
Yes.
But, our kids are resilient, and our students want to do great things. And our students want to be loved. They want to feel valued, but they want to achieve. And even more so, they want to be recognized. And very similarly to when a teacher stands out the door and greets a student coming into the room, either with a hello or a smile or a fist pump or, a high five. Well, we're coming back to school, and we might not be able to high five or fist pump, but we can smile, we can say hello. We can greet people with our eyes, even behind a face covering. But on that remote learning, it was just really an awesome opportunity to watch teachers bond with students, watch students log on early to say hello to their teachers and stay late after most of the class left, just because they still wanted to have that rapport with their teacher or their classmates. So some of what we see on a day-to-day basis inside of a classroom, inside of the schoolhouse, did translate into the remote world. But again, I go back, in my professional opinion and personal opinion, there's no greater relationship than that of the teacher and the student inside the schoolhouse, working together face-to-face on something.
Before we take a break, we spoke the other night at the commissioner meeting.
Yes, sir.
You gave a presentation to the commissioners about going back to school, which I thought was very important. You did a very good job.
Thank you.
But I had a question about the children,
yes,
the youngsters that will be, I guess, K through, 5?
Yes, sir.
And they tend to want to socialize a good bit more than the older kids, with who still will socialize, but they understand more.
Yeah.
They tend to gravitate towards one another. You said you thought we could manage them staying apart and wearing their masks because they wish to be what?
Well, first of all, exactly what I said, I don't recall, but what I mean is students of a young age want to do the right thing.
Yes.
And they want to be acknowledged for doing the right thing. And students of a young age begin to learn boundaries, and they begin to learn the rules. But even more so, they want to feel included in what's going well. And when teachers celebrate those things that are going well, they want to be included in that. So when teachers celebrate that, students are wearing their face covering, then in fact, other students will want to be a part of
positive reinforcement.
100%.
That's basically what he said the other night at the commissioners meeting. I thought it was a great touch.
And, the key part about that is we anticipate a lot of positive reinforcement for all of our students. But I think what would help us in Beaufort County is for all of our teachers and our TAs and our employees to hear that positive reinforcement from the community for them.
How are things going right now? You said earlier about early college. We were talking about that, and I made a note to come back to that.
Sure.
They've been going since almost day one, right?
Yes.
Have they had any infections there?
No. So early college high school started on August 5th, and they've not had any type of outbreak or cluster there. We've been very successful there. But also be mindful that we share a campus, thankfully, with Beaufort Community College. And so we have been able to spread people out, social distance, and follow basically the guidance that the health department has provided. Additionally, a fair amount of those students actually went face-to-face and then decided to go remote learning. And so we don't actually have a large volume of students on that campus right now, but we do have a fair amount of kids who continue to want to go to school, follow traditional school to the best they could. But a fair amount of our early college students have been remote learning. Now, I think when, maybe the semester ends, you might see some of those students transition back and really be more intrigued by face-to-face learning on site. But we have had a school that started on August 5th. And so we've had a lot of lessons learned there, which makes us feel as though we're well prepared for next week.
So this is a success story.
I would say it's a success story. Emily Paik is super smart, very innovative, and how she designs her strategies to make sure that all students get a high quality education. She knows our families well. She knows the students very well. And on the flip side, everyone knows Miss Pake's expectations too. And so I just really appreciate the leadership that she's had. It's very hard to be the first principal to, go back to school in a community during a pandemic and not feel some type of stress or pressure. But she's done an amazing job of just maintaining and moving forward. And I believe kids have done a very nice job over there.
What ages are the early college?
So it's typically grades 9 through 12, but you can have that fifth year for college courses. So you're looking at high school students.
And some of these children are between 9 and 12, closer to 12, are taking college courses.
Yes. So there are some students through that program who will actually graduate not only with a high school diploma, but some of the students actually graduate with an associate's degree. And that's largely in part because
that's a 2
years of college.
Wow.
And the great part of that is it's largely due in part because Ms. Pake, through her vision, sets the expectation for the students who are coming in through the application process of, this is what it's going to look like when you get here. And she meets with families early on before the students actually start their education there. So everyone understands what college work truly looks like, even though it's a high school student taking the courses. And so when school starts, people understand what the rigor is going to look like as related to the relevance of why they're taking those courses. And so she's done a remarkable job there. I'm really proud of her.
For the most part, let me explain this to the public. For the most part, these kids are 16, 17, 18 years old, and 19 graduating with a 2-year associate's degree. Mm-hmm. And they go to college, yes, and they're going to be out at 21. And some maybe 20.
And with the least amount of fiscal debt.
Yes.
So you're taking these courses where you're not having college loans. You're taking it while you're a high school student. It's an amazing opportunity that the Board of Education aligned with Beaufort Community College. And that happened long before I got here, but it was something that attracted me to the district. But specifically, I'll go back and say, the teachers and the principal are just fabulous. And if you want to look at one school that rarely has employee turnover, it would be Emily Pake's Early College High School. The teachers stay there. They work well together. They've built relationships. There's really a true model of excellence at that school.
Parents, if you're worried about college, if you don't think your kids are going to get a good education for no matter how much money you may have to spend, think about this. Get your kids to become disciplined early in life. Find out what they want, and then go to college and attain it, and do it quickly and smartly, and be there to learn rather than to party and have the experience, because that's not working anymore. And this is a great template which you've designed for young adults to become adults and not be children way into their 30s. This is important. We've talked a lot about the way things are changing, the way things will continue to change. The plan is ever morphing into something else. Yes, and there's no way you can control that. All you can do is control the chaos, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
What kind of metrics are you going to put upon yourself and your teachers to determine how successful you will be? Now, we've talked about early college and Principal Pake, and that's turning out great. Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about going forward? What do you see for Beaufort County schools in 2020-21?
Yeah, so remember that the state of North Carolina, along with your federal government, has accountability metrics in place. And right now, the federal government believes that you should still be implementing those accountability metrics, which include your state testing and local testing of students around their comprehension and acquisition of skills and content mastery. So to break it down, in a more simplified version, right now the state believes that you're still going to be held accountable for the end result of how well children did this year. So this is not in a similar fashion to what happened coming out of the spring, where students were promoted largely because of the pandemic. You were already halfway through the school year. Students still have to earn their grades this year. So one, we've really tried to communicate that with families, that school is real. Students are in school, whether they're face-to-face or they're remote. School is real this year. And when I say real, I mean that there are long-term consequences to it, meaning that if you continue to put forth the effort to learn and acquire those skills, then that consequence might be very favorable down the line, or the end result might be favorable. If you do not participate and you do not show up to school, and you opt that your student does not even engage with their teacher and their other students, well, then the ultimate consequence is that you're going to fall behind academically, and the achievement gap grows. So in terms of how do we really track and progress all of this, or progress and track how we're doing this work, is we follow our state metrics. We do have end of course exams. You will have midterms. You will have local teacher assessments. You do have formal and informal questioning of students around their comprehension and what they learned and gained each and every class period. You do have progress reports going out to families. You have report cards still going out. So the business of education has not changed. Now, from the state level, all of that accountability then comes back into how well your school system has done. And specifically in 2013, an accountability model was placed here in North Carolina that assigns A through F letter grades. And so the North Carolina School Report Card is published each and every year. So parents and community members and anyone in the country can see how well Beaufort County Schools has done as a school system, see how their individual school has done, see how well students have performed, teachers have performed. All of that is being maintained this year.
So this is just a return to normalcy.
It's a return to the similar accountability model during a time that is far from normal. And so
well said.
What I can tell
well
you,
said.
Right. And I think people need to understand that we want our families to read with their children 15 minutes a day, maybe 20 minutes a day.
It's a great way for parents and children to interact.
Exactly.
Turn off the TV, turn off the daggone phones.
Exactly. And be present. Be present for your children.
Yes.
We're going to do the best we can when we have your children. And then we need you to do the best you can when your children are with you. And if we can continue that rapport throughout the year, then we'll know that we've given everything we can give. So with that, we're going to continue to use the metrics that are placed upon us. And as a matter of fact, I have a meeting next Friday around testing and accountability with the state. So we're going to continue forward.
Have you ever heard of the 1619 Project?
Yes, sir.
Let me explain this for our folks at home. The 1619 Project is a revisionist history that stipulates that America really began in 1619. Well, America began before that as a colony, but in 1619, that was when the first slave ship came from Africa. It was brought here. I think the English or the Dutch were probably involved with that. And it went to Africa, picked up the slaves, generally sold by the Moroccan Islamic nomads. And they came to America, to Jamestown, and they were put in the fields to harvest tobacco, which was a cash crop and which made America successful, at least in the Southeast. What happened is that is supposed to be a coloring point for how America began, why it began, and our whole history should be forever changed the way we look back on it. Now, we both know slavery was wrong. It was a terrible thing, but all societies, almost all societies, begin with some form of slavery, propelling them forward. It's sad, but true. I can't. If you were to ask me, name one, I couldn't name one where slavery was not a part of the first society. Doesn't make it right, but it is normal. What we did in America is we ended slavery. And we went through a lot of troubles to end slavery. So what we do now is not determined upon slavery. That issue was fought and decided 160 years ago. So now that we've talked about this 1619 project, are there any teachers pushing for it in your schools?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe, the questions that we typically receive from community members, interest groups, parents, is, how do we decide what teachers actually provide to their students? What is the content of the instruction and where does it come from? And what most people may or may not know is that the curriculum and the content standards specifically are really provided to us from the state. So in terms of government that you speak of, it's not the federal government that is required to educate your child. It's the state government that's required in the public setting. And the federal government provides support to that.
About 9%.
And so with that, that's why you see in many public school systems that your state funding is far greater than your federal funding.
Yes.
All right.
It is the lion's share of all your funding.
Yes.
The second, of course, is the county funding.
In most cases, but not all in North Carolina, it's based off of your poverty rates and taxation and what you're able to retrieve. And so there are certain school systems in Eastern North Carolina where it is flipped.
Oh, really? They get more from the federal government?
Yes. And
Wow.
That's not a good thing.
No, it isn't.
All right. So going back to it, though, is just to answer the question, I don't believe teachers are engaged in the 1619 project. I do believe that all teachers follow a standard course of study as designed by the state that really models and outlines specifically what children need to know. And they collectively work with other educators either in their school or across the district to ensure that they're following the most appropriate pacing of instruction, as with hope that the end result is that children have learned what they should learn in 1 year, meaning having 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. And so if teachers, whether it be, U.S. history or chemistry or Spanish or whatever course that a student is taking, if teachers deviate from that specific standard course of study or the content standards themselves, then we hope that it's in support of whatever should have been taught, meaning that it's in addition to supplement or support what's being taught. But as of right now, I've not received any inquiries as to whether children are being educated on the 1619 project. I've heard none of that since I've arrived.
Well, one thing's for sure, with Superintendent Cheeseman being hands-on, and you will probably be more hands-on here in the next few weeks.
Yes.
He will probably find out, and he will stop that. We're not going to have revisionist history in Beaufort County. And I hope we have strong civics being taught in Beaufort County. As we've seen what's happening in the streets of America today, and the protesting becoming riots, becoming looting, and then it is supported by a great group of people because they think that is what democracy looks like. And that is not what democracy looks like. First of all, we're not even a democracy. We're a democratic republic or a representative republic. I like to think of us as a constitutional republic. Democracy is when we elect people. That's a very short period of time. We're in that democracy period right now. But guess what? After November 3rd, that ends. So the kids, I don't think, are being taught. I'm not saying in Beaufort County, but in a large measure all over the nation about what our Constitution is about, what our nation is about, all the good things our nation has done, could do. And it's important that they know that. I mean, we both know Christianity is a good thing. We both know that the Bible has many great teachings in it. But a lot of bad things have been done in the name of Christianity over the years. And that's because man is fallible. Man does crazy things, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't always aspire to be better. Mm-hmm. And our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our Bill of Rights gives us that right to try to be a little bit better as human beings. We have a great government. It's the envy of the world. Why should we tear it down? We should learn what it's about and all be better citizens. That's me getting off my soapbox now. Okay. because I was on it way too long. I've enjoyed talking to you today.
It's been a
I
pleasure.
learned something every time you come.
Well, I do too, and it's a pleasure. So
The public learns a lot too.
well, and speaking of the public, we always invite them to reach out to us to share their ideas, whether it's an email or a phone call or a letter back in the day, right? But we still take letters. But we always invite our community to be a part of the thinking and the growth that we need to do. And considering that, we're really going to look to our community to help us understand whether, what we're doing next week and the weeks beyond is the right thing and whether it's working or not. So with that, we hope the public's not shy and they really work with us.
Well, thank you for coming today, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Sure, let's do it again.
Thank you,
All right.
and goodbye.